Howdy y'all, welcome to Adventures to Kendall. Today we're going to check out the East Auto Tour of the Golden Spike National Historic Park, where we'll see the two railroad grades of the Central Pacific and Union Pacific up close, and see the unique construction approaches both companies had. So let's get going and check out the East Auto Tour of the Golden Spike National Historic Park. We are on the East Auto Tour of the Golden Spike National Historic Park. This is where the Union Pacific worked towards Promontory Summit to the location where the last spike would be driven. The UP work crews encountered a fairly flat building surface to put down tracks on. This changed once they reached the mountain ranges in Utah and Wyoming. Seeing this area within the Golden Spike National Historic Park shows some of the cuts, grading, and trestle construction that were required for building a railroad. We will see more double grades in this episode, as the crews had worked past one another before the meeting point at Promontory Summit was declared. We will see more of the challenges in building these grades that the railroad crews had to work through. We will start from the east and work our way west towards Promontory Summit. This is where the last spike was driven and where the Golden Spike National Historic Park's Visitor Center is located. Right behind me on the hill are the remains of the Central Pacific's Big Fill and Union Pacific's Big Trestle. Here are two examples of hard work for the rail building crews. These are the Big Fill and the Big Trestle, two examples of the thought process to cross the same point of ground. Here is where the crews had to cross Spring Creek Ravine. This would show two examples of getting the same result. The Union Pacific chose to construct a wooden trestle. This wooden trestle would be 400 feet long, 85 feet high, and be located between two great abutments. It would have taken 36 days to complete the structure. The Central Pacific chose to make a fill. This would mean a solid dirt grade across the ravine. It took over 2 months, more than 500 workers, and 250 dump cart teams to move 101,000 cubic yards of fill to cross the ravine. Now let's continue our journey on the Eastern Tour. We are driving down the steepest grade in Utah. This stretch of grade reached 1.7% grade, or 90 feet of rise per mile. In the rest of the 1776 miles of Transcontinental Railroad, the grade seldom exceeded 1.5% per mile. After the line was completed, the Central Pacific stationed helper engines at the base of the grade to assist heavy trains up the hill. This is Chinese Arch, a natural landmark along the Central Pacific route heading to Promontory Summit. It was named after the Chinese men who built the railroad. This limestone formation became a memorial to the thousands of Chinese workers who helped build the Transcontinental Railroad. By 1868, over 11,000 were employed by the railroad. Many of the Chinese remained with the company after the race to Promontory Summit ended. Travelers often noticed their tents along the Transcontinental route. Apparently, one such camp was here during the 1880s when this arch was given its special name. What I'm standing on is the roadbed of the Transcontinental Railroad. This was built by the Central Pacific coming eastward from Sacramento. Both rail crews built these lines past each other despite knowing they were right next to each other. This is also the Transcontinental Railroad. This was built by the Union Pacific heading westward from Omaha, Nebraska. As you can see, it is not well maintained. This is another example of the two railroad grades paralleling one another throughout the Transcontinental route. As you can see, both the roadbed and the cuts through the rock are quite impressive. And speaking of cuts, we're going to see the last cut by the Union Pacific. Along the way, both roads made cuts as they bypassed each other. Here is the last one from the Union Pacific. This place was the last cut for the Union Pacific work crews. The track lane crews were getting close to one another. The Union Pacific was in Ogden, Utah, and the Central Pacific was just west of the Great Salt Lake. Congress and the two companies agreed to meet at a point equally distanced from one another. Promontory Summit became the site for the last spike just by chance. We'll get back to this story in our next episode. But now, let's head back to the studio. I hope you had a great time on the East Auto Tour of the Golden Spike National Historic Park. It was fascinating to see the two railroad grades right next to each other, especially since each had a unique approach in the Transcontinental Railroad's construction. It was quite fun to look at, and I can't wait for the story to end at Promontory Summit. Speaking of which, next week we'll be at Promontory Summit for the Golden Spike ceremony. It'll be a fascinating story to tell, and I can't wait to take you there. Anyway, if you have a location for us to go on, comment or email down below. We would love to see your suggestions. And also subscribe and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. We would love to see your faces. Now that's all the time we have here on Adventures of Kendall. See you later, folks, and may your gifts bless the world.